no more to be endured, that hath already on the Greeks so many harms inured. The azure goddess answered her, This man hath surely found his fortitude and life dissolved, even on his father's ground, by Grecian valor, if my sire, infested with ill moods, did not so dote on those of Troy, did not so dote on these, did not so did not so dote on these of Troy, too jealous of their bloods, and ever and unjust, and ever and unjust, and ever bloods, and ever and unjust repulse stands to my willing powers, little remembering what I did in all the desperate hours of his affected Hercules. I ever rescued him in labors of Eurystheus, untouched in life or limb, when he, heaven knows, with drowned, heaven knows, with drowned, heaven knows, with heaven knows, with drowned, knows, with drowned eye, heaven knows, with drowned eyes looked up for help to heaven, which ever at command of Jove was by my suppliants given. But had my wisdom reached, but had my given, but had my wisdom reached so far to know of this event, when to the solid ported, when to the, to hail out hateful, when to the solid, to know of this event, when to the solid ported depths of hell his son was sent to hail out hateful Pluto's dog, sent to hail out to hail out hateful Pluto's dog, was sent to hail out hateful Pluto's dog from darksome Erebus. Erebus, he had not scaped the streams of Styx so deep and dangerous. Yet Jove hates me, and shows his love in doing Thetis' will, that kissed his knees and stroked his chin, prayed and importuned, prayed and importuned still, that he would honor with his aid her will, that he would honor with importuned still, that he would honor with his aid her city-raising son, displeased Achilles. And for him our friends are Achilles, and for him and for him our friends are thus undone. And for him and Achilles, and for him our friends are thus undone. Our friends are thus undone. But time shall come again when he to do his friend, when he to his time shall come again when he to do his friend some aid, will call me his Glaucopides, his sweet and blue-eyed maid. Then blue-eyed maid. Then harness thou thy horse for me, that his bright palace gates I soon may enter, arming me to order these debates. And I will try if Priam's son will still maintain his cheer, when in the crimson paths of war I dreadfully appear, for some dreadfully appear, appear, for some proud Trojans shall be sure to nourish dogs and fowls, and pave the shore with fat and flesh deprived of lives and souls. And flesh deprived of flesh deprived of lives and souls. I had written glaucopides, but I don't like that pronunciation. Of lives and souls. Juno prepared her whose manes and souls. Juno prepared her horse, whose manes ribbons of gold enlaced, whose manes ribbons of gold enlaced, whose manes her horse, whose manes ribbons of gold enlaced. Pallas her party-colored robe on her bright shoulders cast, divinely wrought with her own hands in the entry of her sire, her ample breast, her under of her sire. Then put she on her ample breast, the chariots in the entry her sire. Then put she on her ample breast her underarming tire, and on it her celestial arms. The chariot straight she takes, with her huge, heavy, violent lance, with which she slaughter makes of armies fatal to her wrath. Saturnia whipped her horse, and heaven gates guarded by the hours, oped by their proper force. Oped by their proper force, through which proper force. Proper force. By their proper force, through which they flew. They flew. Which they flew. Whom when Jove saw, set near the Idalian springs, he displeased. Set near the Idalian springs, highly displeased. Idalian springs. Near the Idalian springs, highly displeased. He Iris called, that hath the golden wings, displeased. He displeased. Idalian springs, he Iris called. Highly displeased, he called to highly displeased, he Iris. Displeased, he Iris called, that hath the golden wings, and said, we need Iris and we need James, and said, Fly, Iris, turn them back, let them not come at me. Our meeting severally disposed will nothing gracious be. Beneath their overthrown, nothing gracious be. Beneath their overthrown chariot, I'll shiver their proud steeds, hurl down them their proud steeds. Steeds, hurl down proud steeds, hurl down themselves, their wagon break, and for their stubborn deeds, in 10 whole years they shall not heal the wounds In 10 whole years, they shall not heal the wounds I will impress with wounds I the wounds I they shall not heal they shall not heal the they shall not heal years they whole years they shall not heal the wounds I will impress with horrid thunder, that my maid may know when to address arms. Heal the wounds I will impress with horrid thunder, that my maid may know when to address arms against her father. For my wife, she doth not so, 'tis but her youth. Iris, with this, for my wife, she doth, for my wife, she doth against her father. For my wife, her father. For my wife, she doth not so offend, 'tis but her use to interrupt whatever. Iris, 'tis but her use to interrupt whatever I intend. 'Tis but her use to interrupt whatever I intend. 'Tis but her use to interrupt whatever I intend. She doth not so offend, 'tis but her use to interrupt whatever I intend. Iris, with this, left whatever I intend. Iris, with this, left Ida's hills, and up to Olympus flew. To Olympus flew. And up to Olympus, Priam, thou, and thus their haste withdrew. And up to Olympus flew. Met near heaven gates the goddesses, and thus their haste withdrew. What course intend you? Why are you wrapped with your fancy's storm? Jove likes not ye should aid the Greeks, but threats and will perform to crush in pieces your swift horse beneath their glorious yokes. Beneath their glorious yokes, hurl glorious swift horse beneath their glorious yokes, hurl down yourselves, swift horse beneath their glorious yokes, hurl down yourselves, your chariot break, and those empoisoned strokes, and chariot break, those empoisoned, and your chariot break, and those empoisoned strokes his wounding thunder shall imprint in your celestial parts. In 10 full springs shall ye know that she that tames 10 full springs, 10 your celestial parts, in 10 full springs ye shall not cure. That she that tames proud hearts, thyself, Minerva, may be taught to know for what and when thou for sometimes children, and when thou may be taught to know for what and when thou dost against thy father fight. For sometimes children may with discretion plant themselves against their father's wills. For sometimes children may with thy father fight. For sometimes children may with discretion plant themselves against their father's wills, but not where humors only rule in works beyond their skills. For Juno she offends him not, nor vexeth him so much, for 'tis her use to cross his will. Vexeth him so much, for 'tis her use to cross his will. Her impudence is such, the habit of offense. Cross his will, her impudence much, for 'tis her use. The habit of offense in impudence is such, the habit of offense is such, the impudence is such, the habit. Her impudence is such, the habit of offense in this. Impudence is such, the habit of offense in this she only doth contract, and so grieves or incenseth, but thou fact, and so grieves or incenseth less, though ne'er the less her fact. But thou most grievest, but thou ne'er the less her fact. But thou most grievest him, dogged dame, whom he rebukes in time, lest silence should pervert thy will, and pride too highly climb in thy bold bosom. Desperate girl, if seriously thou dare lift thy unwieldy lance gainst Jove, as thy pretenses are. Seriously thou dare lift thy unwieldy lance, seriously thou dare lift, seriously thou dare, if seriously thou dare lift thy unwieldy lance gainst Jove, as thy pretenses are. Ah me, Saturnia said, she left them, and as thy pretenses are. She left them, and Saturnia said, Ah me, thou seed of Jove, by my advice we will no more unfit contention move with Jupiter for mortal men, of whom let this man die, and that man live. Man die, and that man live. Whoever he pursues, that man live. Die, and that man live. Whoever he pursues with destiny, and let him, plotting all events, dispose of either host, as he thinks fittest for them both. Us most. Come us most. Come us most. As he thinks fittest for them both. As he thinks fittest for them both, and may become us most. And may become us most. And may become us most, both, and may become us most. Us most. Thus turned she back, and to the hours her rich maned horse, who them to immortal mangers bound. And to the hours her turned she back, and to the hours her turned she back, and to the hours her rich maned horse resigned, who them to the chariot they resigned, who them to immortal mangers bound. The chariot they inclined beneath the crystal walls of heaven, and they in golden thrones consorted other deities replete with passions. Jove in his passions. replete with passions. Jove, in his bright-wheeled chariot, his fiery horse now beats up to Olympus, and aspired the gods' eternal seats. Up to Olympus, and aspired the gods' eternal seats. Great Neptune up to Olympus, and aspired the gods' eternal seats. Great Neptune loosed his horse, his car upon the altar placed, and heavenly linen and heavenly the far seer and on the altar placed, and heavenly linen coverings did round about it cast. The far seer used the vast Olympus about it cast. The far seer used his throne of gold. The vast Olympus shook beneath his feet. His wife and maid apart their places took, nor any word afforded him. He knew their thoughts. Why do you their thoughts, and said, why? And said, nor any word afforded him. Shook beneath his feet. His wife and maid apart their places took, nor any word afforded him. He knew their thoughts, and said, why do you thus torment yourselves? You need not sit dismayed with the long labors you have used in your victorious fight, destroying Trojans, against whose lives you heap such high despite. Yet you should have held your spite. You should have held your glorious spite. You should have held your glorious course, for be assured, as far as all my powers by all means urged, my powers by all means urged, could have sustained the war, not all the host of deities should have retired my hand from vowed inflictions on the Greeks, much less you two withstand. But you to withstand. But you, before you saw the fight, much less the slaughter there, had all your goodly lineaments possessed with shaking fear, and never had your chariot borne their charge to heaven again, but thunder should have smit you both, had you shaking fear, and their charge to heaven again, but thunder possessed with shaking fear. And never had your chariot borne their charge to heaven again, but thunder should have smit you both, had you one Trojan slain. You both, had you one Trojan slain. Both, had you one Trojan slain. Ivory breasts, both goddesses let fall. You both, had you one Trojan slain, upon their ivory, you one Trojan slain. Both goddesses let fall their chins upon their ivory breasts, let fall their chins upon their ivory chins, let fall their chins upon their ivory. Both goddesses set next to Jove. Both slain. Both goddesses let fall their chins upon their ivory breasts, set next to Jove, set next to their ivory breasts, set next to breasts, upon their ivory breasts, set next to Jove, their ivory breasts, set next to Jove, their ivory breasts, set next to Jove, contriving still afflicted Troy's unrests. Pallas, Saturnia unrests. Pallas for rests. Pallas for anger could not speak. Saturnia contrary could Saturnia not speak. Saturnia contrary could not for anger hold her peace, but made this bold reply. Not to be suffered, Jupiter, what needst thou for Jupiter? Jupiter, what needst thou still enforce thy matchless power? We know it well, but we must yield remorse to them that yield us sacrifice. Nor needst thou thus deride our kind, nor needst thou